When I was a boy, friendship seemed like one of the easiest things in the world. You showed up on a playground, kicked a ball, and by the end of recess, you had a new best friend. There was no ceremony, no overthinking. If they liked the same cartoon you did, you were practically family. We built forts out of old blankets and scavenged wood, traded snacks from our lunchboxes, the coveted Gushers for the humble Oreos, and swore blood oaths, or as close as kids can get. With a solemn prick of the finger and a mumbled promise, we promised to be best friends forever, a phrase that, at age 7, felt like a legally binding contract. Friendship back then was a physical thing. It was the feeling of a scraped knee from a fall you both took, the shared scent of freshly cut grass on a summer afternoon, the synchronized silence of two boys lying on their backs, staring up at the clouds and inventing stories about their shapes. It was simple because the world was simple, and our entire universe was contained within the small radius of our neighborhood and our school. But somewhere along the way, it got complicated. Friendships stopped forming on their own. Schedules got busier. People moved away. Suddenly, having friends wasn't something that just happened. It was something you had to fight to keep. It was the first time a phone call was met with, "I'm so sorry, I'm just swamped right now." And you felt a hollow echo where a simple, "come on over," used to be. The ease was gone, replaced by a new, more deliberate kind of effort. I learned this the hard way. I was about 12 when my first real best friend, Alex, moved away. We had spent entire summers together, playing catch, riding bikes to the corner store for popsicles, and daring each other to jump from increasingly dangerous heights into the river. Looking back, it's a miracle we didn't break every bone we had. Our friendship was built on a shared language of inside jokes, on the understanding that a raised eyebrow could say more than a paragraph of words, and on a deep trust that we would always have each other's backs. When Alex's family announced they were moving 3 states away, I was gutted. It was the first time I had to truly say goodbye to a piece of my life that felt as permanent as my own shadow. We spent the last week together in a bittersweet blur. The final day, we rode our bikes to the top of a hill overlooking the town. We didn't say much. The silence was thick with the things we couldn't put into words. The fear that this was truly the end. The sadness of a future we would no longer share. As he rode away for the last time, I watched his silhouette get smaller and smaller until it disappeared behind a line of trees. I sat there for a long time. The world seemed a little quieter without someone to share the silly, small moments with. The kind of friend you can sit next to for hours doing nothing and still call it a good day. We promised to write letters, and we did. For a while, the first few were long and full of details about our new lives. I told him about my new school and the kids in my class. He wrote about the strangeness of his new town. But as months turned into years, the letters slowed. Life in our new worlds took over. And eventually, the friendship dissolved into memory. Not with a fight, but with the slow, quiet erosion of time and distance. At 12, I didn't know how to process that kind of loss. I just knew that something felt missing. That was my first lesson about friendship. Sometimes it ends not because of a fight or betrayal, but simply because life takes you in different directions. Fast forward to my late teens. College was a whole new ballgame. Suddenly, I was surrounded by hundreds of strangers who didn't know me at all. At first, it was terrifying, but then, almost magically, it became exciting. I found myself drawn to a group of misfits who, like me, were figuring out who they were. There was Sam, the guy who played guitar badly but with such passion you couldn't help but sing along. His fingers fumbling on the frets of a beat-up acoustic guitar while he belted out songs he wrote himself, filled with the kind of earnest, clumsy poetry only a college kid could love. There was Maria, who always had a book under her arm and a knack for saying the exact thing you needed to hear when you were spiraling. Her quiet wisdom a constant anchor in our frantic world. And then there was Derek, A guy with a laugh so contagious that he could single-handedly turn around the mood of an entire room. His booming, full-throated laugh was like a force of nature, and just hearing it made you feel like everything was going to be all right. We became inseparable. We stayed up all night debating music, politics, and the meaning of life, sometimes in that order. We pulled each other through breakups, bad grades, and existential crises. For 4 years, those friendships were the center of my universe. We ate greasy pizza at 2 a.m. in our shared common room, the smell of burnt cheese and cheap pepperoni filling the air as we argued about philosophy. We huddled together during finals week, fueled by coffee and sheer panic, sharing notes and inside jokes to keep from losing our minds. And then, graduation happened. One by one, we scattered to different cities. The group text buzzed less and less. Phone calls became yearly check-ins. And before I knew it, another chapter had closed. It hit me then how fragile friendship can be if you don't actively nurture it. We had built something beautiful together, but we let it slip through our fingers because we assumed it would always be there. We treated it like a permanent structure, a house we could leave and come back to whenever we pleased. Not realizing that a house, left empty and unattended, can fall into disrepair. The feeling of stepping back onto that silent campus for an alumni weekend years later was a gut punch. The ghosts of our past selves laughing in the common room, now replaced by strangers living their own stories. There's one friendship, though, that taught me the power of reconciliation. In my early 30s, I had a falling out with Paul, my best friend since high school. It was over something stupid, truly, embarrassingly stupid. We were supposed to start a side project together, a small marketing firm we dreamed up on a napkin over beers. The idea was brilliant, but I got cold feet, got lazy, and let the whole thing fall apart without a word. He called me out. I got defensive. Words were said that couldn't be unsaid. And just like that, 20 years of friendship ended with a slammed door and a bitter silence that was harder to bear than any fight. For 3 years, we didn't speak. 3 years. It was a self-imposed exile. And every day I felt the weight of it. There were so many moments I wanted to call him. When my favorite sports team won a championship. When I had a bad day at work. When I just needed to hear his laugh. But my pride was a concrete wall between us. Then, one night, I ran into him at a mutual friend's wedding. We did the awkward nod, the polite small talk about the weather. But by the end of the night, we found ourselves standing outside in the parking lot, under a string of fairy lights, talking about everything we had missed. His father's passing, my divorce, the big and small things we would have shared if we hadn't been so stubborn. I finally had the courage to say I was sorry, not just for the project, but for my pride. We both apologized. We both laughed at how foolish we'd been. And somehow, the friendship came back stronger. The silence had made us both realize how much we had to lose. That night taught me that some friendships are worth fighting for. Not everyone can be saved, but some, the truly meaningful ones, can survive even long winters of silence. Fast forward to 2025, and friendship faces a new challenge: distraction. We live in a world where it's easier to scroll than to talk, easier to like than to call. Social media tricks us into thinking we're connected when really, we're just skimming headlines of each other's lives. We see the highlight reel, the filtered photos, the perfectly crafted captions, and we mistakenly think we know what's going on. But friendship isn't a highlight reel. It's the behind-the-scenes footage, the unedited, unvarnished moments. I've fallen into that trap myself. I once went 6 months without seeing a good friend who lives 10 minutes away. Yet I kept up with him by watching his Instagram stories. He posted a photo of his new baby, and I felt like I was a part of his life. It wasn't until we finally sat down for lunch that I realized how much I had missed his actual voice. His actual presence. The way his eyes light up when he talks about something he loves. The digital crumbs I had been feeding on were no substitute for the real meal. Since then, I've made a practice I call asterisk asterisk. One real thing, asterisk. Once a week, I reach out to someone in my circle, not with a text, but with something real, a phone call, a walk, a cup of coffee, a handwritten note. Yes, I still use stamps. It shocks people every time. It's not about grand gestures, just consistent ones. It's a deliberate choice to step out of the digital stream and into the real world. Because friendships don't thrive on accident. They thrive because we choose them, over and over again. Of course, not every friendship is healthy. Some are toxic, some need boundaries, some need to end. I've had to let go of friends who couldn't be happy for me, who drained more than they gave, or who simply no longer shared the same values. It hurt every time, but it was necessary. The space they left made room for healthier connections. There was a guy the first had been friends with since childhood who, in adulthood, became resentful of my successes and openly mocked my failures. For years, I told myself that was just how he was. But eventually, I realized his negativity was a poison seeping into my own life. Letting him go was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but also one of the most liberating. The truth is, friendship isn't just about holding on. It's also about knowing when to let go, with grace, if you can manage it. Now, at 50, I see friendship as one of the greatest treasures of my life. Not the number of friends, but the depth of them. A few close, trusted people who know my worst stories and still show up anyway. I think of my friend Tom, who once drove 4 hours just to sit with me after my mother passed away. He didn't bring advice or solutions. He just sat there, sipping coffee, letting me cry, letting me be silent. That, to me, is what real friendship looks like. I think of Maria, yes, the same Maria from college, who sends me a card every year on the anniversary of my divorce. Not because it's something to celebrate, but because she knows it was a turning point in my life and doesn't want me to feel alone on that day. When I picture the last chapter of my life, I don't dream about yachts or mansions. I dream about a porch, a circle of chairs, and a few old friends telling the same stories we've been telling for decades, laughing so hard we have to wipe our eyes. Grateful we're still here, still together. The wrinkles on their faces are like the rings on a tree, each one a testament to the years we've shared. The jokes get older, the memories get fuzzier, but the bond only gets stronger. So here's the lesson I've learned. Friendships are one of life's greatest investments. They don't just happen. They require time, effort, forgiveness, and sometimes courage, but they are worth every bit of it. When you find the people who see you, who challenge you, who stick around even when life gets messy, hold on to them. Show up for them. Make the call. Send the text. Take the drive. Because at the end of the day, it's not the promotions, the possessions, or the Instagram likes you'll remember. It's the faces around the fire pit, the laughter that shook the walls, the quiet moments where someone simply sat with you and said, "I'm here." And if you're lucky, really lucky, you'll have a few of those people around when the sun sets on your life. That, I think, is one of the best definitions of success there is. Asterisk.